Shad glide baits. This is probably the hottest topic right behind Midstrol and rubber dice. Weirdly enough, right now bass fishing is kind of in this weird transition of people really getting out and trying different things, and shad glide baits has basically been that. Where before, the only guys that were actually fishing these shad style glide baits were swim bait guys. It was just something that swim bait guys were just like, yeah, it's a shad glide bait. This is no big deal. It's been around for years and years and years. But within the last 3 or 4 years, we've been seeing a lot more just random guys picking up these shad glide baits and fishing them. We've seen it now on some of the Elite Series guys are fishing them. A lot of tournament guys are now using the shad glide baits in tournaments to try and catch a bigger class fish or a kicker fish. We're seeing random YouTubers that never threw swim baits before getting into throwing shad glide baits. We're seeing beginner fishermen, just people that are just now starting fishing, already picking up shad glide baits because it's kind of just this really big popular thing right now. And a lot of that has to do with the introduction of live scope, and I feel like more guys are like looking for a shad glide bait, something that's fairly easy to throw and just will downright get bit, and they can track it on live scope. And we've seen it in Texas, we've seen it in a lot of places in the South, and so it's just become a staple lure that basically you will see on every single boat anywhere in the country now at this point. And again, shad glide baits, they're nothing new, but in just like the last 3 or 4 years, there has been an absolute influx of companies and bait makers making shad glide baits, and now we have hundreds, and I mean hundreds of different shad glide baits out on the market, and a lot of them kind of just do the same thing, where it's kind of like a choppy side-to-side action and the fish just crush it. However, there are some that kind of go against that grain and try and go a little bit wider on the glide, like a traditional glide bait that you would see. Now, what is the difference between a shad glide and just a normal glide bait? Well, I consider this guy right here. This is the DRT Clash 9. This is your standard typical glide bait. It is kind of a shorter profile, maybe a little bit on the longer, more narrow shaped bait. But then when you look at a shad glide bait like this Hinkle Shad here, it has a much more taller profile to it. And overall, the Hinkle Shad looks more like a gizzard shad than the Clash 9. Now, for me, I do personally feel like profile can actually give you a slight advantage when those fish are really keyed in on threadfin, gizzards, and other types of bait fish. And so, obviously, I catch a lot of fish on that Clash 9, but I would be lying if I said there's times when I just feel like the fish really seem to be more hypnotized by a bait fish profile that's very similar to what they're actually feeding on. So the Hinkle Shad is honestly a great impersonator of those fish that primarily feed on gizzard shad. Not saying those fish won't hit a K9, they will absolutely smoke a K9, but sometimes I do feel like having that more shad profile can get you just a couple more bites or even bigger bites in the long run. So today I just wanted to talk about some of my favorite shad glide baits that I've fished within from a decade ago up until just a few months ago, and I've had a lot of good success. One of them actually is made from a local guy, one of my buddies. His name is Dylan. He is an absolute hammer out here, local guy, and he started to make some shad glide baits himself. And one of the days I was out there, I saw him, we ran into each other, we were fishing around, and he's like, hey, can you toss this guy around and see if you can catch any fish on it? I said, sure, let me give it a shot, and I ended up catching a couple fish on this bait.
Holy shit. Holy shit. Holy shit, that was disgusting. Alright, look at that fish. Whew. Nice big old dinosaur. One-eyed Willie. Oh my god. On Dylan's glide right there. That was absolutely insane. Just a nice post-spawn summertime fish. I'm thinking probably 7 pounds or so. Pound 10-ounce fish. One-eyed Willie, big head, skinny fish. Awesome. Whew. Oh my god. Another nice one. Another nice one on Dylan's glide. Yeah, doggy. Holy shit. Goddamn that. Oh, but we still got her. Nice fish. Yabai. Yabai, yabai, yabai.
So yeah, it was pretty fun. Like that was like a hour window bite where I caught that fish. I had a few other followers, and then I caught another fish right after. All on this bait right here. It's got a really good swim to it. Dylan is an absolute hammer. He knows how to make a glide bait, and he improves. I mean, this is kind of his newest model, and I think he's only stepped it up. There's actually like scaling pattern on it. Great colors. Overall, it's got a good swim, good action, good profile, size, everything that you'd ever want in a shad glide bait, and it just gets bit. Kind of goes back to a lot of the shad glide baits out there on the market. Nowadays, you know, in 2024, most guys that make a shad glide bait, for the most part, a lot of them swim really good. It's not too hard to make a shad glide bait nowadays. There's a lot of, you know, videos on it. There's a lot of people that are willing to help others kind of get started in making them. And so it's kind of the hottest thing, and they just get bit. And so when you're fishing them or you're prototyping them or you're trying to promote the bait, it's pretty easy to get bit on it, and it's just a really, really solid choice for anybody that's getting into swim bait fishing. Then the other guy, you guys have seen me, one of my latest videos over here. I'll leave a link to it if you haven't. I caught a couple fish on the Hinkle Shad. Everybody knows about the Hinkle Shad now at this point. Kind of Milliken Fishing put this bait on the map. He definitely had a huge influence on the market for these guys, where before Milliken was really fishing these, you could probably buy these for retail or sometimes even under the retail, but he caught a lot of giant fish on this bait, and you know, he's a very popular fisherman, and a lot of guys needed to get their hands on this bait. And realistically, it's a really, really good bait. My first one that I ever owned, I had in 2014? I want to say the first one I ever owned was in 2014, and I bought it straight from Andrew at the time. I waited maybe 3 months for it. It came in, caught some fish on it. It was a good bait, but I really just wanted that Hinkle trout instead, so I traded away. And I never got another one since basically like a couple months ago when I saw another one, said, screw it, let me buy another one. And I got some fish basically the day after I rattled canned it. And so I was like, okay, yeah, it's a shad glide bait. It's a Hinkle shad. I know it's going to get bit. A lot of guys catch fish on the bait. Is it overhyped? Yes, but it's also just a really good bait. Is it worth $500? No, don't be ridiculous. No swim bait is really worth $500. But if you really, really want one, then and you're on a bite and you know like this style of bait's gonna get you that bite, then maybe it might be worth it to you. But overall, $500 for this thing, no. Like I said, there's many shad glide baits now on the market that will probably get you the same bites as the Hinkle shad. It's just, do you want to be cool, like the cool kid and own a Hinkle shad? Then you might spend the money for it. But the bait has a pretty good swim to it. It's different than a lot of the other shad glides because it has kind of a more traditional, wider glide to it. You can get it to kind of chop well, but I like it to kind of glide wide, side to side, and you can get that action on the Hinkle. Now, the original shad glide bait that was kind of really, really hot back in the day, and it's still pretty hot, but the guy who makes them doesn't really make them as much, and he's kind of like dwindled down in popularity, but that's this guy. This is a Fish Atlanta. This is the High Power Swim Baits Gliding Gizzard Shad. This is a super old, beat up bait that I've had for a very, very long time. It's been absolutely chewed from muskie, pike, largemouth. Like, this thing has gotten absolutely chewed, but it's one of my favorites of all time. At the time, Randall was making these, the guy who runs Fish Atlanta. Randall has been making these since I want to say like 2012, 2013. And the attraction of this bait was, one, that kind of foil that he put on the bait, the overall profile of it was just ahead of its time, and it just downright got bit. And the way that you fished this bait was actually at a high speed. So like you just rip. And the action on the bait was just do. It did not have a wide glide at all to it. It was very fast action, very just flashing all over. And it would just flash like super hard in the water. And I think that's what got a lot of those bites. That's when those fish were super juiced on, gizzard shad or big threadfin or anything like that. And you just burn it fast. So we were fishing this bait from spring, summer, and fall. And you're just chopping it. And they would absolutely smoke it. A lot of guys have caught a lot of giant fish on this bait. I've caught quite a handful of fish on this bait as well. And it was just a really, really fun bait. Unfortunately, my fish don't react the same way like they used to, 7+ years ago when I was really catching them on this bait. Nowadays, they'd rather have kind of a much slower side-to-side action. I bet I could still go out there and catch fish on this bait, but it wouldn't be like what it was back in the day. And so I've kind of chosen other glide baits that I don't have to fish as fast to get that bite. I could kind of maybe slow it down, hang it up along the wall, and then cut, hang it along the wall. While this bait really shined at that fast, high-speed retrieve, and it used to get bit a lot, but not anymore, unfortunately. Obviously, this bait could play into a lot of people's fishing, but it's surprising to know that a bait that was super, super popular, I bet you there's a lot of guys now that have never even heard of or even seen a bait like this before. And that's just because, again, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shad glide baits now out on the market, and they kind of just become saturated over a lot of time. And since, Randall doesn't make these anymore, really, it's kind of just dwindled. And this used to be my absolute favorite glide bait. This used to be kind of a huge staple in the swim bait community, but it's kind of died out over time. And then one last one. I haven't had a whole lot of time with it, but I do think it's a legit bait. And that is the KGB and Spro collab Chad Shad. This is that ABS version of the original Chad Shad that a lot of guys had a lot of success with. But Spro and KGB, they wanted to kind of collab and make a ABS version that's more readily available to guys at a much lower price point. And so I was fortunate. The first time I ever fished with one of these guys, I caught an 8-pounder on it. And so I was like, okay, it's a legit bait. Like, this thing is legit. It's only like 2 ounces, 7 inches. Like, I would say that this is kind of the standard size for a shad glide bait that a lot of guys are just willing to fish. It's not too big. You could throw it around all day. It's got a really good swim to it. The sink rate, it sinks pretty fast. You can drill out weight here and have it to be a lot slower of a sink, but that kind of gets into more tinkering and messing around with that a guy just getting into it probably won't want to do. But overall, I'm pretty impressed with the Spro Shad. I think it's a fantastic bait. I think a lot of guys have had a lot of success with, and it's just something that I think a beginner could definitely get into and catch a lot of fish with. So when it comes down to shad glide baits, you almost can't go wrong. Again, like I've said a million times in the video, there's hundreds of them out on the market. You have stuff from Bull Shad, you have stuff from, I believe, Clutch, you have stuff from Hill Country. Like, there's tons and tons of them out there on the market. You almost can't go wrong anymore. It just depends on, oh, I kind of like that profile more, or I think this one has a really nice paint job on it, or this one's available right now to buy. Like, nowadays, you can't go wrong with any of them. They all basically swim good. It's 2024. It's not like there's a lot of people that are trying to put out bad stuff, and the biggest thing is trying to get your bait to swim right, get a cool reel of it, trying to get fish catches on it, trying to send them to people to catch fish on it. Like, can't go wrong with shad glide bait. It's a bait that you can fish on any body of water. I think the biggest thing when it comes down to shad glide baits is that it's so universal. I mean, basically every body of water in the entire country has shad in it. And so a lot of guys might be skeptical about throwing like a Hinkle trout or a Depths 250 that has a more, slender trout profile look to it, but a lot of guys have gizzard shad or big threadfin or anything like that, and so they have a lot more confidence in throwing a shad style, shad profile glide bait to just get those fish to bite. And of course, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, but I think the biggest thing is confidence in what you're fishing, so you will fish it more, and if you fish it more, you'll eventually just figure out the bait and you'll get more bites on it. Shad glide baits, I know a lot of you guys are probably fishing them. Let me know what your guys' favorite shad glide bait is down in the comment section below. And I'd like to hear some more suggestions on shad glide baits I should try in the future. I'm always interested in them. Of course, I fish the classics and I fish some of the new ones. So let me know what you guys think down below. And other than that, thank you guys ever so much for watching. And we will see you guys on the next episode. Peace out.